Biko. Eh? Eh?
Let's go.
Which I
Okay,
can say
let's see. Let me
Kulani.
see. Let's see. Okay, ready to go? Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. You're most welcome to today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. I am Ayo Myro Essay.
And I'm Valentine Ogo. Good morning.
All right, on today's show, we have the pleasure of having Cheta Wanze. Morning, Cheta. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm still begging you. Lagos, help me beg Ayon.
Isn't it interesting that when it comes to Ayo, he'll beg. When it comes to me, he'll bully.
He'll be ordering and bullying. Can you imagine?
If I
It's
come
because
to
I'm
you,
a
if I come to you,
See what I mean?
All right, okay, so violence already on a Monday morning. It's the 16th of August 2021. Time check, it's 7:31 a.m.
Yep.
And you can send us your message. 0809 444 0981 is our WhatsApp number.
Yes, you can send your comments as well through YouTube. Just type in the search box, Smith FM Lagos. You'll find us. Kindly subscribe so you can watch anytime we come on live.
All right.
We'll start with this first story, Cheta. Punch newspaper reports that the Federal Inland Revenue Service says it has appealed the judgment of the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt. Recall that they had issued an order restraining the FIRS from collecting VAT and personal income tax in that state. But the FIRS in the reply say they've appealed that case against the judgment on the Federal High Court. But what are your thoughts regarding the situation of things, especially as they're saying that people should retain status quo?
Yeah, that's how it is. When they appeal, then it goes back to status quo ante. But I expect that this particular case will get an expedited hearing and pretty much soon, probably Q4 this year or Q1 next year, will stand before the Supreme Court. This is one of those cases that is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And it's a very, very important case because this is one of the things that we'll call restructuring by law. And these are the things that our politicians need to keep an eye on. Our politicians, our economists, policymakers generally. Before I get around to blasting the Lagos state government, yes, it also concerns them. Let's look at basically a history of VATs and all of these things. Now, this decision is very momentous because of that geopolitical effect, geopolitical reason. VAT is collected by the FIRS, a federal organization, and then shared equally to all the states. And we've been seeing a lot of quarrels, especially coming from the southern part of the country. Typically, after images emerge from the north, particularly Kano, of organizations like Hisba breaking beer bottles, and people will be asking, why should they be sharing VATs from alcohol sales if they're impeding the sales of alcohol? Now, if the ruling from the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt stands ultimately after the Supreme Court, you will find that each state will administer VAT in a sales tax, and then the federal government will administer VAT in Abuja. Lagos is the highest collector of VAT, followed by Abuja. Now, a brief history of VAT. VAT was introduced by Abacha in 1993 to replace the sales tax, which was one of the one of the effects of SAP imposed by Babangida in 1986. It was always bound, especially since it was a federal thing, it was always bound to cause tension between the states and Abuja. Unlike in the military era, when the military administrators had no choice but to just obey without complaints, since the return to civilian governance in 1999, states have been vocal, especially southern states, about their unhappiness with VAT. But the reaction has been different. So Lagos, as an example, has imposed a consumption tax on top of VAT, as opposed to, say, Rivers, which has chosen to sue the federal government. The fact that Rivers sued the federal government 20 years after the return to democracy is a moot point. They have sued, which is the right thing to do. Get the legal interpretation rather than punishing consumers in your states. The ironic thing is that if this ruling stands, the biggest losers will actually be states outside of Lagos, Rivers, Delta, Kaduna, Kano, Oyo, because the VAT collection, collecting VAT in itself comes with costs and all of that, which right now is borne by FIRS. But at the end of the day, it is about the rights of states. and whether states are viable or not. That for me is the key thing in the ruling. We can no longer keep sustaining this heavily centralized system. So if we are going to start having tax on sales, let's go to the states. That's my stand. Let it go to the states. Let the states be the, and you trust me, if we if the ruling ends up standing, you will see that all this breaking of beer bottles will stop. Because at the end of the day, it is revenue for the states.
You think?
At the end of the day, it will be revenue for the states. So by the time you see this huge hole, because what happens right now is that beer is sold in Lagos, or let us look at another place that they love to drink beer. Beer is
So
sold
a different
somewhere,
commodity because none really.
no, let's look at alcohol.
Alright.
Yeah, because that's the most contentious one. Beer is sold, alcohol is sold in Lagos or in Owerri. All the money is collected by FIRS and then sent to Abuja and then distributed to all the states equally. So it doesn't matter to the man in Kano whether he breaks bottles or not. He will still get that money.
Although business
But
owners, okay, go on.
But if it now becomes you only collect the money from the beer sold in your state, and then people start to see that huge revenue hole, behaviors will change. There are no more powerful incentives in this world than economic incentives.
Yes, but business owners are complaining that this might affect them. In the sense that if you own a business and you decide to site a branch in different other states, at least 4 states, for instance, you'd have to pay multiple taxes in each state for one business.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's a sales tax. So you are paying tax on the sale
Made in particular states.
made in the particular state. So right now, federal VAT is 7.5%.
Yes.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong if each state imposes its own in a genuinely federal system. There's nothing wrong if Lagos has 7.5%, Kano decides to have 2%, Ebonyi decides to have 3%. Now, so each state will collect at the point of sale. So it doesn't matter if Valentine registers a phone selling business and he doesn't have a branch in Nasarawa. He will not pay VAT in Nasarawa. If he does it sale in Nasarawa, then he will pay VAT
On
there.
the sale.
Yeah, so that addresses that concern.
Thank you so much. Let's go quickly to, since we're around Nasarawa, all this, the northern states. Let's talk about another one. The Plateau State government has imposed a curfew on Bassa, Jos North and Jos South local government areas. This reported in Premium Times following Saturday's attack on commuters in Jos North local government area. 23 persons were reportedly killed and 23 injured. They said at least 20 people suspected to have been involved have been attacked so far. The presidency describes this arrested so far. Thank you for that. The presidency has reacted to this attack and says it's not a farmer-header clash, but strictly a well organized and orchestrated attack on the state and its formations. What are your thoughts, please?
Well, first things first, God rest the dead. I think it's wrong for people to be killed because the people who were killed in this incident are not Plateau indigenous. They just happens to be traveling from Bauchi back to Ondo State, I believe, somewhere in the southwest, I think, in Ondo State, because they had gone to attend Sheikh Dahir Bauchi. He's a big Islamic cleric up north, and he had in Christian, this we call it a convention. He had something in Bauchi, and they attended. So they were traveling back, and their boss was intercepted, or their bosses were intercepted, and then they were singled out and they were attacked. That's pretty awful, and it's an extension of the collective guilt, which I always say Nigeria is guilty of. So, collective guilt. What were they collectively accused of being guilty of? And this is where government's failure becomes very, very evident. So this is where I have to be very careful in what I say, because regardless of what I say, there are people who will misinterpret it. There has been killings going on in and around Bassa, Jos North, Jos South for at least a month now. There have been complaints. People have accused Fulani herders of coming in and killing people. Now, whether it is true or not is irrelevant. What is the point is perception. And this is where government failure comes in. The government hasn't said anything. Look at how quickly the government reacted to this Miangu thing now. We had in Zamuna, which is in Basa local government, in Jebu Miangu, which is also in Basa, we had killings on August 1. In Angwa, which is in Jos North, we had killings on August 4. Not a statement by the government at the federal level. The closest that came was from the two state governments, which said it's farmer header conflicts. And now we've had this, and the federal government, the very next day, there was a statement from the federal government. It will only end up putting it in the minds that have already been poisoned. You are ending up justifying what they think, that you are taking one person's side, and government is supposed to be neutral.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. Already, one of my people in Plateau said that people are already saying that the curfew that has been declared is to enable the army come in and take out young boys. Whether that is true or not, again, is irrelevant. What is relevant is this is what people now believe. The government's reaction is reinforcing that belief. So people will react based on what they believe to be true. Because the government has not managed perceptions accurately or properly. And then, so it has ended up giving the impression that they have taken sides. What that means is that we will see more of this. It's unfortunate, but we need to be able to tell ourselves these bitter truths that if our government cannot be seen, it is important for the law to be upheld, but also to be seen to be upheld.
Since you're on that note on the law being upheld and to be seen to be upheld, I think it's a good time to take this headline from the Premium Times. Unlawful detention, Nigerian army disobeys court, refuses to release Enugu governor's aid. I'm still talking as well from the point of view of treating everyone in different regions across board at, in the same way, the same level. So it's nearly a week after a federal high court in Port Harcourt, River State, ordered the Nigerian army to release unconditionally the senior special assistant on security matters to the Enugu state governor, Tochukwu Okeke. The military authorities have yet to obey. There's a background story, and I'll allow you take us through that background story as to how we arrived here. But Mr. Okeke's lawyer, Chinedum Agwarambo, had filed a fundamental rights enforcement suit for the release of his client imprisoned by the 82 Division Nigerian Army Enugu since the 5th of July.
Which is a month and 11 days ago. So you have essentially kidnapped this guy in violation of his constitutional rights for a month and 11 days, a month and a third.
So before we go on, why in this report, according to this report, why was he arrested?
So he was accused of being an IPOB/ESN member, and he's an aide to the governor.
And it's not been founded. They haven't proven
They haven't been able to prove anything, and this is a problem that the army has. This is something that has been a problem in the East for a while now. The army just goes in, accuses boys of being IPOB members, and then takes all of them. Essentially, the very population that you're supposed to be winning over and convincing them, trying to explain to them why they should be a part of the Nigerian project, you are alienating them by these high-handed tactics. Just over a week ago, Amnesty International said that in the Southeast, the army has killed more than 115 boys.
That's their claim. Interesting.
Amnesty showed evidence, and the army hasn't refuted it.
All right, thank you. So, would there be any reason at all, Cheta, why the army would refuse a court directive, and what are the consequences?
Yes, plain impunity. That's the one. It's impunity again and again.
So
that the government, especially this government, cherry picks what to obey and what not to obey. Think of Zakzaki as an example.
Yes.
Think of numerous orders regarding IPOB. The government cherry picks what to be. What the effect of that is, it undermines the judiciary, because the judiciary appears helpless, unable to do anything. So why should I? It's part of. Let's take the story that we talked about previously, the Plateau story with the Irigwe ethnic group. It's the same thing. They do not believe that they can go and get justice in the judicial system, so they take the law into their hands.
All right, thank you very much. On that note, let's go on a break. When we come back, we have some comments on WhatsApp and we'll check out YouTube as well. And then we have some more headlines for you here on Freshly Pressed 981. Stay tuned.
Monday.
Honestly. See, so
So shall
like
we
this,
do
just
five?
like this,
What's that?
no.
Monday.
Shall we do five? Sorry, four.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
This Katsina threatens to
Customs,
sue.
yeah.
There's nothing in the story.
Because there's really no evidence here to say that customs really killed, except for reports. It
No,
seems like they're
customs
reacting
did,
to
again.
reports
Customs
of
did
reckless.
kill.
Alright.
Well,
Back.
please put YouTube. YouTube. Back. It's Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life, and we are ready to take on the second half of the stories for today on Freshly Pressed 981.
Yes. In the meantime, we have messages here. Prince says on the VAT issue, biggest losers will be the states except Lagos. A few states like Kano, Rivers, Oyo, Kaduna, Delta, and Katsina may experience minimal impact, while at least 30 states, which accounts for less than 20% of VAT collection, will suffer significant revenue decline. The federal government may in fact be better off given that FCT generates the second highest VAT after Lagos, in addition to import and non-import foreign VAT.
Also, I
Chris,
like
thanks for reading the SBM newsletter on Friday.
Right?
I also would like to also talk about his second part of the comment.
Yes,
the previous
please.
Supreme Court judgment had ruled that VAT covered the field of consumption tax, and therefore a state cannot impose a consumption tax in addition to VAT. This means any state intending to impose VAT will have to repeal its existing consumption tax.
Which Lagos basically ignored. So, I mean, again, it's all part of we need to resolve these issues.
Yes.
We cannot be running this unitary system. It just doesn't work. And so the centrifugal forces are getting a lot stronger because we insist on running a unitary system that is clearly not working.
All right.
Let's move on to this next story. Talking about unitary systems, payments for goods and services and tax. There are now soaring cost of living, ticking time bomb. That's how it was described by the former central bank governor Haji Mohamadu Lamido Sanusi. He means no words in concluding that the nation's socio-economic problems have worsened under the President Muhammadu Buhari-led government, which he stressed has eroded all the gains the nation achieved from 1980 to 2014 at the onset of Buhari's administration. What are your thoughts on this? You know, the words of, I would say, criticizing the present government by the former CBN governor at his 60th birthday, by the way.
I think a more interesting one to watch. I didn't watch the colloquium. I don't know that it was on any TV station or. And besides, I've been traveling, so but I found 2 hours to watch a debate between Sanusi and Bishop Kuka, which happens, I think, on Friday. Again, I wasn't able to watch it live, being on the move, but I sat down one evening and watched it on YouTube. Very instructive. Sanusi is right. So this is one of those situations because I have criticisms of him, his statements and things that he did while he was governor of the CBN and all of that. But it doesn't change the fact that he is right. So we have a situation where 11 out of 20 people in this country don't have anything doing. This is I'm quoting official figures.
11 out of
every 20.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's higher, but this is official figures. Food prices essentially double every 3 years. Again, official figures. A survey that we did, so away from official figures, shows that 58% of people in this country, which is essentially 3 out of every 5, spend 63% of all their income on food.
Facts.
So 58%, 3 out of every 5 Nigerians spend, out of every 100 naira they make, they spend 63 naira to eat, which leaves them with 37 naira to spend on other things. And because of the rising prices of food, that is actually being squeezed even further. So this study that we did was in 2019. It would have gone up. We just haven't had the time to do a follow-up study. That is a recipe for social unrest. Every quanta that has happened in this world, in history, that they call revolution, it didn't kick off because of bad governance. The taxes that eventually led to the French Revolution, you can actually trace a straight line from when Louis the 14th imposed those taxes at the beginning of the 18th century to when the French Revolution happened in 1789. But what triggered the French Revolution? So they had been bearing that burden, and in between there was a plague. There were all sorts of things that happened, but it didn't push people into revolution. Until one day they went to beg the queen for bread, and she looked at them and said, "If you don't have bread, go and eat cake." This queen was the wife of the grandson of the person that imposed the taxes. So 2 generations had passed. In Russia, Bloody Sunday happened in 1905. But it wasn't until food finished as a result of the First World War that people entered streets. In Nigeria, when we had NSAS protests, the NSAS protests were sustained because the organizers were smart enough to be feeding the people who were coming out to protest.
Yep.
The moment that food was taken away and there was a crackdown,
The moment the accounts were blocked.
like I said, food was taken away because when the accounts are blocked, they cannot buy food again. The moment that food was taken away, and then the army was sent in to disperse the protesters the way they know how, and then riots started. Where did the riots first go to? Palliative stores, where food to serve as a safety valve. The question we should be asking ourselves is, what happens if that food is no longer there? Especially given that the UNDP has warned last week that we are facing food shortage in this country.
All right. Thank you very much, Cheta, for your analysis. I'll go to comments from Tajuddin. Tajuddin says that on food statistics, Cheta is on point. I earn 120,000 naira per month. I spend 50 to 60,000 on feeding every month. The rest on transport and basic utilities. No savings for the month.
Have you and Madam quarreled yet? Because there was a day that, as in, this was over a year ago. I gave her money, she go market. The next month, I gave her the usual chop and she go market. What she brought back was not the same thing as what she had brought back the month before. And then I went to run my dirty mouth to say, did you chop the money? And she didn't talk. The next month, when I wanted to give her chop, and she refused. She said, "You go to the market." I was like, this woman riot too. So that's how she kept me. It was when I saw that my children will not eat that I carried my 2 left legs and went to the market by myself.
You saw for yourself.
And I saw.
No,
And since then I have seen that
It's something terrible.
These days, when you carry a cart, if you push a cart at the supermarket, if you actually can afford things at supermarket these days, you find out that your cart is not.
as a big boy.
If you
No,
breathe
it's like
in the
one-
supermarket, you
1/10
spend
of the cart.
10,000 naira.
I go to my 2 now, no fish shots.
Walk down 1 mile.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about doctors, actually. Federal government moves to stop consultant doctors from joining strike. It's 2 weeks and resident doctors are still on strike. And now the federal government is now trying to scramble to ensure that the only doctors who are working, who are consultants, do not also embark on a strike. So the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, has directed the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission to halt the movement of consultants from CONMES to CONWA salary scale. So Medcan had on July 26, 2021, issued a 21-day ultimatum to the federal government to correct the unwarranted removal of the content of the consultants from CONMES to CONWA salary scale. And Medcan is the Medical and Dental Consultants Association of Nigeria. Cheta, please take us through the story. It's a lengthy one and worth reading with regards to what is plaguing the health sector in Nigeria.
I don't know why we should take anybody through a story when it's fairly obvious that these guys are detached. So they are just trying to put plaster on a wound that is like 3 inches deep. And it's I think the ridiculous part of the whole matter is that Ngige himself is a doctor.
Yeah.
He is a doctor. Yeah, see what he's doing to his fellow doctors.
But do you think he
So
remembers, or it makes any difference?
he hasn't said that. He hasn't addressed the issue of NAD,
No, he
the
hasn't.
resident
Yeah.
doctors that have been on strike. And the irony of the whole thing is that the resident doctors were on strike as of a time when the president of the country was busy receiving treatments for whatever is doing him outside the country. And then rather than address it, he's trying to prevent the consultants from going on strike by refusing by not moving them from Conmess to Conwas, which has been agreed. You understand?
Yeah.
So essentially, choking the what's the English word for true?
Eating.
Interesting.
Essentially hitting the same thing that is paining them.
Yeah.
That's essentially telling them, oh guys, still go on strike, sha.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Right. So, what is there an end to these to the strikes by doctors? We've seen the impact on
There
society.
can be an end if there is sincerity.
Yeah.
But Ngige and his fellow travelers are not sincere, and they frankly do not care. You understand? For them, it's just to create.
So it's a leadership problem
appearances.
that
It's
we
a
have.
leadership problem.
All right. Okay, let's go on to it. It looks like for most of the stories we've taken today, we can trace it back to a leadership challenge, isn't it? Let's look at the Vanguard story. I'm sorry, I wish I could give good news because it feels like quite a depressing morning.
What
But
people call me today? Actually, I've just been sleeping.
Nigeria
To give us
records 111 kidnapping cases in 8 months. It's a detailed report by the Vanguard newspaper, and I'm actually glad that they drew from a report by SBM Intelligence stating that an average of 13 persons were abducted daily in Nigeria in the first half of 2021. What they reported, that's the Vanguard, is that a staggering 111 kidnapping incidents have happened in the last 8 months. However, I'm also glad they qualified that by saying that these were the only ones that were reported, confirmed cases. So we don't know of the other ones that haven't been reported, which would probably spike the numbers. Cheta, please take us to the story.
I don't even know what to say because again, I work in an organization that tracks all these things, and it's depressing. The people who we send on leave more often are those who track incidents of violence in the country because the young men are depressed because you hire these young men enthusiastic, happy to work, and then at some point you put them because of the degree that you have in school. This is going to be your daily routine, looking at the numbers of security incidents in country, and before you know it, these smiling young men become perpetually sad because they realize that they are living in a country where their lives are not worth more than the life of a chicken. And it is the same thing. Look at the attitude. So we have, as an example, in Niger State, some children have been kidnapped for months now. Kids as young as 5. Commissioner for Information was kidnapped. In no quick order, he's released. And then he lacks the irony. He's able to come and be telling us, oh, I was no money was paid. I was released because I preached to them and told them to stop doing. I'm quoting him now. I was released because I preached to them and told them to stop doing bad. And when I was reading verses from the Quran for them, some of them were crying and they promised not to. They promised to. They promised that they will leave those bad ways behind. But they have still not released.
Shouldn't we take advantage of that revelation by him, since he's the Messiah of kidnapped victims? And I'm being honest in saying this, to actually carry him as the person who ambassador.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Actually, let him go to. We should take him out. Let him preach to the other band.
Well, the first test has already been filled.
How?
The children haven't been released.
Or did he go? Did they send him there?
Huh?
Did they send him? You don't get what Valentine is saying. Since he seems to have the key to speaking to people to repent,
kidnappers,
since following his claim, he should be taken to these places.
So why didn't they, since they have repented, why didn't they come out with him?
Exactly. And down their tools. But yeah.
Thank you, and down their tools.
I think it's quite unfortunate, and we have to remember, like you've mentioned, it's become and in this Vanguard report.
I don't even think it's unfortunate anymore. It's logical. It is what society rewards. Sources that I cannot quote claim that more than 100 million naira was paid to secure that commissioner's release. I'm using the word claim because, again, it can't be verified.
Yeah.
Now, if that is the case, we have rewarded those guys. Same thing, Kankara, Kagara. All we pay ransoms to these guys. So it is a lucrative business. It is a high growth industry. We had one in Lagos here where where was it? A child was kidnapped and they were demanding, what was it, 30 million or something. So we are rewarding this thing. And so when you reward something, what do you expect?
So
A
would
society reaps what it
So
sows.
final question, according to what the governor of Kaduna State said, that's El Rufai, that we should stop paying ransom. What's your, so do you think that's the approach we should
I don't
adopt?
take what El Rufai says seriously for a very simple reason. He was the first to pay ransom and he admitted it on Channels TV.
Like Bengus says, is it only food prices? Before the increase in electricity tariff, 5,000 naira could buy 222 units of electricity. But now that 5,000 naira only buys 94 units. Yet the so-called investors are still telling us that the pricing isn't still right. Sincerely, it is becoming unbearable.
And this one, Princess, is the doctor strike federal government's issue or state or both? What are the issues? All the stories seem confusing. Thank you so much for that.
Obviously, it's both. I mean, the federal government had stated earlier on that the states were responsible for some of the outstanding demands of the resident doctors, and now federal government is also trying to ensure that payment is done on the platform that they agreed on. That's all we can take at this time. However, join us in about 8 minutes for today's edition of Lagos Talks 981. There we'll be dissecting and analyzing even further, this time with your comments and contributions via telephone and, of course, on all available platforms as well. Thank you very much indeed for staying tuned. Shall I say you should stay